All right, chapter 4 on the resurrection. Note that when you spell resurrection, it has one S and two R's. I might make this a vocab word just so you have to learn how to spell it. Resurrection of Jesus, chapter 4 of this semester on Jesus' life. And to go over your bell ringer, who can inform me, how did the Jewish people prepare a body for burial? They wrapped them in this cloth. What did they do before that? Before they wrapped a body, anybody, more myrrh, aloes, a lot of oils and spices. They would try to preserve the body a little bit, decrease the odor that would come from a corpse, and then they would wrap them up. They put them in the tomb. By the way, Jesus' tomb was not this spacious. This looks like a nice living room of a caveman. His tomb was very narrow. You could barely fit one body through this little opening, and then he was kind of like put on a shelf off on the right. If you ever go to the Holy Land and see it, I've seen a replica. I haven't been to the Holy Land yet. All right, so that's how they prepared a body for death. And I'm going to flip to this slide so you see the picture of how they would wrap the cloth around the person. It's tough to describe, but it would go over, they would lay them down, feet on the end, and then they would wrap it around their head and then use basically ties to go around the body. So it wasn't quite like a mummy, but it was very similar to a mummy. It wasn't the thin strips that you see the mummies wrapped in, like toilet paper. Oh, I don't know. If you want to research that, you can get a lot of bonus points for that. Jewish traditions of burial rites. Why did they do it that way? I don't know. It was definitely to respect the body, to respect the soul. Every culture did this to different ways. Of course, the Egyptians, who were very distant from the Jews, um, it's similar in a lot of ways. So I can't answer those historical questions. But anyways, this burial cloth is called the shroud. Okay, and we Catholics, not definitively, not dogmatically, but we mostly believe that we have the shroud today, and that's where the Turin part comes in. This is where the shroud, we believe, is kept. We Catholics keep it here in Turin, Italy. The Pope is the owner of it. There was a wealthy man who owned the shroud about 500 years ago, gave it to the Pope, the Vatican, and it's been stored in a climate-controlled container in Turin, Italy, and it is exposed for the public to see every few years. Maybe 10 or 15, though, actually. It's a lot of years. They don't expose it regularly. But this was the last time they did expose it. Pope Francis goes to visit it, touch it, be near. We believe we still have it. It's, you don't have to believe it. I showed you an ed puzzle for your bell ringer about a scientist who's pretty sure it's the real one. But I'm going to give you some evidence maybe today. But that's where Shroud of Turin comes from. It's simply located in Turin, Italy, which is a pretty big city in Italy. Okay. Question so far. What two apostles got to the tomb first? Cole. Simon Peter and who do you think that is? Who's the beloved disciple? John. A couple of y'all got that? Taught you that in chapter 1. The beloved disciple is how John refers to himself in his gospel. And he got there first, symbolizing that he might have been holier. He might have been more fit. He might just be faster than Peter. He was younger. But nevertheless, even though he might be holier, even though he might be faster and more pleasing to Jesus in some ways, he lets Peter go in first because Peter is the first pope. Peter is the leader, and so he defers to Peter. So it's a beautiful sign of respect there to Peter. They see what? A napkin cloth that would go over Jesus' face, and they saw the burial cloths laying right there. Okay. And we believe we have these cloths today. We call it the Shroud of Turin. Now, 100 years ago, or more like 130, 40 years ago, photography is invented. And when you took a photograph, you got the negative, and then you had to transfer it to a positive. What, y'all know what a negative is? No? It's basically like the most extreme filter possible to try to speak in your social media posting terms. It's where you flip what is light with dark and dark with light. And so this is the shroud that Pope Francis is looking at. Like if that is the shroud, if you flip the light and darkness, you're going to get this. And you can see a lot more clearly what this shroud has when we took the negative photograph, when we flipped the light and the darkness. And yes, that, as you hopefully recognize, is what I have here. This is the negative because it's mostly dark. And what Pope Francis is looking at is the positive, the original. I traveled the country teaching about the shroud for a year of my life, and so I had a couple of these printed. And when I left seminary, I just decided to keep it. So this is going to be a game changer when it comes to the resurrection. Okay. Any questions so far? What the shroud is? We're going to go through what it looks like. Okay. So I'm going to give you some basic reasons / evidence that the shroud is legit. We're going to ask the following questions. When was it made? And where was it made? And then who's on the shroud? And then how could this have been made? A couple of talking points to say that this shroud is, 2,000 years old is because it has a specific weave pattern. It's called the 3-to-1 weave pattern, and the cloth itself is in a weave pattern that is proper to Jesus's day and age, not a weave pattern that is proper to the Middle Ages or any time thereafter. The cloth itself resembles Jerusalem, the Holy Land, Palestine in the first century. All right. Now, this is something you can't see only under special scientific technology, but when they buried a body back in the day, they would put coins on their eyes. They would have, they put all the oil and stuff on, and then they would put coins on their eyes, as if to say, stay asleep, keep your eyes closed. So they put coins on their eyes, and then they would wrap them up. Well, under special lighting, you can see an imprint of coins on this face, and those coins are coins that are back in Jesus' day. They actually have the name Caesar written on them in both Latin and Greek, 2 different languages. So the coins that are on the eyes is monetary exchange for Jesus' day and age. So that dates us back to Palestine. That pulls us back to the first century. Also, on this Shroud of Turin, you have pollen in abundance. There's 58 different kinds of pollen. More than 40 of those kinds of pollen are from Jerusalem, which means that this shroud was primarily used and exposed in Jerusalem. And what time of the year is pollen traveling around the most? Spring. Very good, which is exactly when Jesus died. The Passover, which happens in spring. 33. 33. We believe he started preaching and proclaiming the kingdom of God at the age of 30. And he did that for 3 years, died at 33. Why? What were you thinking? Yeah, yeah, and being tortured will do that to you. Yeah, it'll age you for sure. Um, Plus, he's yeah. I think it's mostly the torture, but he's also of a different race than we're used to seeing. He's Middle Eastern. He's not white. Jesus was not Caucasian. He was Middle Eastern, Arab, olive skin, dark hair. Peyton. Yeah, 30. He's baptized and then he starts proclaiming. That's like his initiation. We have one story when he was 12, and that was the finding of the child Jesus in the temple. That's the only thing we have. from when he was born to when he was baptized, pretty much. Yeah, one story. All right. So, who is this? Because we have burial cloths of the time of Jesus, but none of them look like this. What you have is a crown of thorns around this person's head. If you look at the head, there's all these droplets. Remember, this is the negative. So if we were looking at the original shroud, what you would have right here are actual drops of blood, human blood. Human blood is around the head, reflecting the blood that would have been, dropped there from the crown of thorns. So whoever this person was, they had a crown of thorns. They were pierced in the side. You're going to have to look at my demo in the corner of the room to grasp this. But right here is the piercing in the side, the right side. And in goes the lance, out comes, all this is blood and water. Of course, the water probably wouldn't be there anymore, but the blood leaves its imprint. Oh, all these random triangles, these are all burn marks from a time when it was folded up, in thirds and then long ways. And then it was in a church fire. The church is going up in smoke, and some of the fire got onto the edge of the shroud, and then somebody was able to put out the fire. So, and then medieval nuns just patched it up with medieval fabric. Anyway, okay, so we've got a man that's pierced in the side. We've got a man who has long hair, which means this person is Jewish. Romans kept it short. Jewish people had longer hair. This is a cool fact, too. Y'all know Jesus was scourged and whipped by Pilate. Well, what would they use would be a whip with 3 ropes coming off of it. And at the end of these ropes were sharp claws of sorts. I don't know if they were necessarily animal teeth, animal claws, rocks, or flint, but they would be very, very, very sharp, and there would be 3 of them hitting you. If you count all the scourge marks, you see scourge marks here on his forearms, around his chest, some of them on his legs. Flip them over, you're going to see a lot more on his back if we had the negative of the back right here. You count them up, you have 120 scourge marks. So if I've got 3 prongs here, how many times was Jesus whipped? 120 divided by 3 is 40, which would have actually been the typical Jewish punishment for a crime. You got 40 lashes for not listening to the government. So that's quite fascinating too. Hold on, I'm going to pause this recording so I can finish it.